We'll now reconvene open session. From closed session, roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Mosby.
Present.
Councilmember Vega.
Here.
Councilmember Cordova.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Dirk Starbuck.
Present.
Mayor Janelle Osborne.
Here. City Attorney, any report out from closed session?
Thank you, Mayor. City Council met in closed session to discuss the labor negotiations item on the agenda with both the Lompoc Police Officers Association and the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. Staff gave a report to council, and council gave direction to staff, but no reportable action was taken.
Thank you. I would like to invite Pastor Joy Price forward, and all rise for the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good evening. Let us pray. Great Creator, we thank you for this community in which we live and lift up our praise for what you provide us each day. You are the abundant one who provides all that we need, even when we think it is not enough. Tonight we pray for our leaders at all levels of government. We ask that you pour out your wisdom upon them that they might make good and caring choices for all people. We ask that you lead them in paths of righteousness. We pray they will listen to your insight and will perform their duties in the most upright and faithful manner. O Holy One, we know that as people we all stray from your path and we turn toward the idols of power, greed, and fame. But as your leaders, we ask that you direct us in the best ways, your ways. We ask for your pardon and mercy when we act wrongly. We ask for your forgiveness and healing when we turn away from you. Be with us this night and always as we say yes to your call to lead your people. We need you and your abiding love. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. City Manager report, please.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just a few tonight. A reminder that there will be a special council meeting this Thursday, October 3rd at 6:30 here in the chamber for a consideration of the Planning Commission's recommendations for approval of the comprehensive update to the city's zoning code. Also, we have Fire Station Number 1 will be holding an open house this Saturday, October 3rd from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Did I get the date right? I think might have been, sorry, October 5th. I wrote the wrong one down. So it's October 5th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. There'll be scheduled events such as fire extinguisher demonstrations, kitchen fire demonstrations, the fire safety trailer demonstration, and much more. Please come out and meet the firefighters, participate in the fun activities, and take a tour of the station. There's a slide there. They might let you slide down the slide. An early reminder, but we do have our Make a Difference Day coming up on Saturday, October 26th. It'll be held from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. It'll be at different events or different projects will be going around throughout the city. It's hosted by our City of Lompoc Parks Division. For those who have any questions or if they would like to sign up, please contact our Parks Division by Friday, October 11th at 805-875-8035. And it's also on our website if there's need for more information. That's all I had.
Thank you.
Mayor.
Yes.
Sorry, I did want to add something as the city attorney to the city manager's report. As just a reminder to the public and to the council, as I do once in a while, we have our city council handbook. And as I have noticed, and we may have all noticed at past council meetings, there has been a tendency by some members of the public during public comment to address comments to individual council members and not to the council as a whole. I've been a little lax about this and not interrupted the member of the public or interrupted the meeting in order to speak about that. But I did want to remind both the public and the council that we have a city council handbook rule that states in Rule B 4.9 that when we're in public comment, all the remarks and questions from the public should be addressed to the council as a whole and not to any specific council member, any specific staff person, any specific person in the audience, or any specific member of the media. Comments are to be to the council as a whole. And the reason for this is because the purpose of our council meetings is to discuss the merits of the issue, of whatever issue is at question, and not to engage in remarks about particular people, attacks, whether they be personal or political attacks. We're here to talk about discussing issues to help Lompoc go forward. And so that's why we have the rule in the council handbook, and I just wanted to remind that to everyone here tonight.
Thank you.
Real quick follow-up, is there any desire, because I don't think we brought it forth in the last few years, is there a desire by council? I can actually ask the city attorney to do a presentation on the handbook, and then if there's any changes that the council would like to see on that, we could put that as an agenda item.
I'd like to see that happen.
Do we have a second or third?
I'll second him. Refreshers are nice.
So it's a council request. Council's not taking any action here, but it's just a council request to bring an item back to a future meeting, so it would need 3 votes.
Councilmember Cordova.
I will be the third.
Thank you.
There you have it. And moving on to consent calendar. We'll open the floor for public comment on consent calendar, which is a list of items considered as routine and enacted in one motion in the form listed below. No separate discussion of these items unless good cause is shown prior to the council vote. Any items withdrawn from the consent calendar for separate discussion will be addressed immediately before the second oral communications near the end of the meeting. The floor is now open. Seeing no one rise, we'll close public comment on consent calendar and entertain a motion. Councilmember Mosby.
I just had one correction on the September, or addition on the September 3rd, and that was my request that we write a letter to California Fish and Wildlife for public access. It was access and as well as fishing. So it was the activity of fishing in that letter as well. Other than that, I'd make the motion with that addition.
I'll give you a second.
Okay. With that change, we have a motion and a second. Any additional comments, discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. And that passes 5-0. There are no staff presentations, announcements, or requests on the agenda, so we'll move on to oral communications regarding general city matters that are not agendized. So if you have something you'd like to speak to that's not on the agenda tonight regarding city issues, the floor is now open for 3 minutes per person.
Thank you, honorable council members in general. Hi, my name is Matthew Barron. I have lived in Lompoc since 2004 when I moved to be closer to family. Outside my participation in local elections, my apologies for my lack of involvement in the political goings-on locally. That said, here I am. And to boot, I debut tonight as the new Guardian Angels Lompoc chapter head. Due to my past personal experience with the Guardian Angels in San Francisco, recent press releases in the record in which the safety of the average law-abiding citizen in Lompoc was called into question. Polls circulated on Facebook, the Lompoc Valley Neighborhood Watch and Community News Forum, and also I posted on the Neighborhood Watch app. And due to positive interest in securing more information regarding how the Guardian Angels might be able to help Lompoc, 2 Saturdays ago at Starbucks Ocean Ave, we met with a representative of the Guardian Angels, Jay Takaki, commander of the Orange County Guardian Angels organization, and his wife, Rose. Jay and Rose very compassionately responded to my inquiries representing the group and came most immediately to share info about the Guardian Angels' role in, when involved within a community. We paused for a moment of silence, hands over our hearts, as from the Starbucks veranda we watched at the veteran motorcycle riders group and Welcome Home military heroes escorted the body of Specialist Marlon Wardell Brumfield Jr.'s body to family and loved ones at his funeral service. With that solemnity in mind, allow me to share a summary from the Guardian Angels' mission and philosophy directly from their training manual. The Alliance of Guardian Angels is a nonprofit 501c3 organization founded in 1979 in New York City, New York. Their mission is to provide positive role models for today's youth and work toward promoting community safety and betterment for the good of society overall. Their philosophy is to empower individuals through service to others one at a time. They train people to take constructive and cooperative action to solve individual and social problems. Their focus is on building relationships, whether interpersonal or organizational. They are one of the few organizations in the world to open their doors to people regardless of race, ethnicity, nationality, gender, age, disability, religion, political view, and sexual orientation. They are a street roots organization that provides hope, security, and opportunity to those who are otherwise forgotten, oppressed, harassed, discriminated against, disenfranchised, set back, or impoverished. Now, with the help and guidance from several city officials, may I?
I'll let you wrap up.
Okay.
I'll give you an extra 30 seconds.
Okay, thanks. And so the good news is, since that meeting and the help of local citizens, we've acquired a space to meet and train. And on October 19th this year, Jay Takaki and a group of veteran Guardian Angels will come back to meet with all of those that gather at that location and for the very first training session. Thank you for taking the time to listen. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Barron, for organizing that. If you would contact our city manager's office and provide that information, we'll make sure the community is aware that this is available and can participate. So thank you for organizing that.
Okay, you're very welcome.
Thank you.
Good evening. The proposed method of calculation of ADU impact fees seems reasonable. Applicants may find it helpful, however, if a couple of things were clarified in the resolution. Please determine for this calculation which impact fee categories will be applied to ADU construction. The resolution and attachment A don't define which impact fee categories will be included in the prorated charges. In the council packet, there are 4 examples of ADU impact fee calculations. One would expect that each would be charged the same gross impact fee by category against which the proration would be applied. Because the gross impact fee by category varies from property to property, and not all impact fee categories were charged to each of the properties, it's not clear which impact fee schedule was used. Although Attachment A defines also when solid waste impact fees will be charged, each example but one was charged a refuse impact fee. In addition, could you please define primary dwelling for this calculation? The proposed method of calculation of ADU impact fees is found in Attachment A. It is ADU square footage divided by the, quote, legally existing square footage of the primary dwelling on the property, unquote. There is no definition in the resolution or the attachment, however, of what is a primary dwelling. Is it a 40 by 50 foot single family dwelling that actually has a garage incorporated into it and a permitted patio room? Or is it just the area that has not been added or includes the garage? Before approving this resolution, those two things would really add to the clarity of the resolution and make it easier for people to go forward with what could be a real benefit to our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no one else rise, we'll close oral communications and come back to the agenda, starting with the public hearing. Item number 3, adoption of resolution number 6277, parentheses 19, approving the method for calculating the development impact fees to be assessed against projects for accessory dwelling units. Discussion of August 9th, 2019 claim filed by Diane Long related to ADU fees. And we have our City Attorney, Jeff Malave, to start the presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We're here tonight because on the City Council's meeting of August 6th, Council directed staff to bring back this item to have the Council consider and approve the city's method for calculating impact fees on accessory dwelling units. The method that the city currently uses to impose fees on accessory dwelling units is explained in the August 2018 memo from the city manager that's attached to the staff report. This method complies with the current state law regarding ADUs, which says that fees on ADUs must be proportional to the impact of the ADU. So because the city had already adopted an impact fee for single-family dwellings, what staff did administratively was apply that fee to an ADU in compliance with state law, an ADU as just another type of single-family dwelling, and developed a proportional method for doing so. Council on August 6th directed that this item come back as a public hearing so that the council could review and approve the method that was administratively implemented by staff. I'd just like to note for the record that this public hearing and this approval by the City Council is not legally necessary because we are not increasing any fees or establishing any new fees. We're applying the fees on single-family dwellings that have already been adopted by council in the way required by state law for ADUs. That resolution is resolution number 6277, parentheses 19, that's attached to the staff report. And essentially, as the member of the public during public comment stated, the fee is calculated by taking the size of the ADU and dividing that by the size of the existing primary dwelling unit on the property. That is going to result in a fraction. That fraction is then multiplied by the fees that would be imposed on a single family dwelling on that lot, and that's how the ADU fees are determined. Consistent with state law, city's Current policy also does not charge any fees for utility hookups or for a new water meter if the ADU is an attached ADU attached to the primary dwelling and it doesn't require any new hookups. If the ADU is detached and the city determines that it requires new hookups, then those fees are charged. On August 9th of 2019, the city received a letter from Diane Long requesting reimbursement of the ADU impact fees that she paid to the city in the summer of 2018, as city staff does for the normal claim process. We evaluated that claim and issued a letter to Ms. Long denying that claim because her fees were calculated according to the memo from the city manager that's in your packet that is consistent with the state law. City Council, even though staff has denied that claim, City Council does have the ability to settle that claim in any way that it wishes. If the council would like to discuss negotiating that claim, then we can schedule a closed session to do that, as we would do to settle any other claim or litigation. The last point that I wanted to make is very relevant to the discussion tonight, and that is a bill that is currently in Sacramento called Senate Bill 13. It's been passed by both houses of the state legislature, and it is awaiting signature by Governor Newsom, who has to decide whether to sign it by October 13th. That bill will mandate the certain fees that cities can charge to ADUs, to ADU projects. That bill would say that if an ADU is less than 750 square feet, the city would not be allowed to charge any impact fees to that ADU, 0 impact fees. If the ADU is larger than 750 square feet, then the new state law would mandate that the process that we have in our memo that we're currently following would apply, dividing the square footage of the ADU by the square footage of the primary dwelling unit and using that fraction. This is not the law yet, but it may be the law on or before October 13th, depending on whether the governor signs this bill. But it was passed by overwhelming margins in both houses, and the governor is expected to sign the bill. Staff's recommendation is to hold the public hearing, take public comment, and then consider adoption of the resolution attached to the staff report. That concludes my report. I'm available for questions.
Councilmember Mosby.
Yeah, in light of the fact that SB 13 is happening and more likely going to be signed into law, I would like to make a motion that we continue this item until after we find out the results of SB 13, because it would significantly modify any changes. No need to change this now and make another change soon. So I would like to make that motion as such.
Councilmember Cordova.
I would second that.
Do we need to take public comment?
You don't need to.
Okay.
It might be more efficient to let the public comment after we know what the result of the bill is.
Okay.
But that's up to the council.
Okay. Councilmember Vega.
You're saying, Councilman Mosby, you said after it's decided. When is that, sir? When are they doing
The
that?
governor has to decide whether to sign on or before October 13th.
So
That's in 13 days,
to
12
clarify his motion, I think it's a little bit vague on what you're asking for. You want to bring back for discussion, but he was clear by saying we could come back in closed session and discuss this. Is what you're saying that we could come back in closed session and discuss the fees on this issue? Is that what we're saying, or we're not saying that?
I'm saying come back with the whole item, just like it was brand new, but you would have the opportunity both for the closed session and the full discussion of.
So we're not going to be dealing with the individual Mrs. Long
Not tonight.
issue? Is that what your motion did
Right.
not include? That's why I'm trying to clarify.
My motion is just continue the whole item until after SB 13. I think it would make significant difference for the person making the appeal as well, if we wait until after then.
Okay, I got you, thanks. I'll give you a third if you need it.
Oh, you're right. City Clerk brought up a good point, and that is because it's a public hearing, we do need to continue it to a date certain. So we have a council meeting on October 15th, but the staff reports are already due for that meeting. So we wouldn't be able to write a new staff report based on what the results of the bill are. So if we could do November 5th, that would work.
Modify my motion till November 5th, continue until then.
Councilmember Cordova?
City Attorney, I have a question.
Yes.
So if the law was to pass and the 750 square feet comes into effect and there is no fees, would that change anything for anyone that has already paid the fee?
My understanding is that the bill is not retroactive. So anybody who has already paid fees, the cities would not be required to refund those fees.
Okay.
But council can do whatever they wish.
Okay. And yes, that date would work for me.
So you also second the change to the motion?
Yes.
Okay. Councilmember Vega?
One more question here. If we're going to say we're going to come back and discuss this based on it passing, are we not just delaying the issue if it does pass? Do we want to make a motion that we're going to have a closed session for this or not? What are we discussing if it passes?
So
We'd be bringing the whole component back,
But what are we expecting
as
the
well
outcome
as
to be?
potentially for a closed session. It would be exactly what we're doing now, only we do it at the later date with other
It's
information.
kind of really, it's just time. Is that what it is?
No, it's, state law would change everything significantly to our ordinance.
there's potentially a new law on the books.
No, I understand that.
And it would impact our decisions made on this and
understand
have
that.
to make
It's
them
clear.
twice.
It's clear. Thank
If we
you.
make one now, we'll have to actually bring it back and change it again
Okay,
if this
I
law
got you,
passes
ma'am.
anyway, so
Thank you so
we're
much.
actually saving some time this way.
Thank you, Bob. Just asking. Thank you.
Any other questions before we vote? Seeing none, let's vote. And that passes 5-0. Ms. Long, thank you for your patience on this. All right, unfinished business, item number 4, discussion and consideration of safe parking pilot program. Community Development Director Christy Alicorn. Oh, okay. Well, we are having some technical difficulties with our staff loading the program onto the screen, and as soon as that happens, and we are back on.
It's when you called it to everyone's attention.
Hey, sorry, I was trying to keep it.
So, good evening, Honorable Mayor, council members, staff, and public. I am Christy Alarcon, the Community Development Director for the City of Lompoc. Tonight, I will be presenting information for consideration of a safe parking program. Oops. So, a brief history of data we have regarding our homelessness in Lompoc. In the 2017 point-in-time count, 219 persons experiencing homelessness were identified as living without shelter in the city of Lompoc. With that number of people experiencing homelessness, we only have one emergency shelter, which is a 56-bed shelter. Because of that, the city, like many other cities in the state of California, declared a housing shelter crisis in October 2018. The Safe Parking Program initially was presented to City Council in December of 2018. We won't go there yet. And that was because of various reasons. Homeless persons sleeping in their vehicles and recreation vehicles throughout the city has been having an adverse effect on the residential community as well as the business community. Large vehicles parked for long periods of time can block visibility, and they also pose other health and safety hazards. While our city police department receives many complaints from Lompoc residents and business owners regarding these vehicles creating such hazard, there is little the police department can do to enforce without offering a safe place to direct them to. Back in December 2018, staff presented the Safe Parking Program for discussion, and after much discussion, council directed staff to return with an alternative location, and I think we talked about a couple different ones. So the following locations were being presented, and so I've done a little research on those. So we'll just go right into it and start with the first one, and that's the Johns Manville Park parking lot located at 300 North A Street. You'll notice there's concerns and limitations. These aren't just my opinions of concerns and limitations. I kind of reached out to various people, both here at the city and then also the community. So obviously one of the concerns is the baseball field's usage until 10 p.m. throughout the weeks. It is those are two of our few fields that have lights. So our kids are playing Little League there and practicing and things like that. Parking lot is identified as an emergency evacuation site, so that was PD's input on this site and their concern for identifying it for a safe parking site. And then on my end, we did just apply for some major grant funding for this site that I am being very optimistic that we will be successful in getting, and that would mean we would be scheduling some site renovations utilizing that grant funds for this site. But of course, there's always some proponents. One of the proponents to utilizing this site is the fact that the way it's laid out, it is, so the gray driving area, if you think of an RV or something trying to get in there and park, it kind of enters from the east side and could wrap around and exit on the south side. So it does offer that as a proponent to utilizing that site. And it's pretty large, so it could accommodate some of those larger vehicles. I would have told you how many parking spots it could accommodate, but we've never had the funding to get the striping done, so no stripes to count. The next one, and I just brought it up again. I know we talked about it the first time, but I figured if we're considering everything, let's just throw this one back in there. And that is the City Hall parking lot, which is located right out front here at 100 Civic Center Plaza. Concerns and limitations are that it is located on one of the city's main thoroughfares. There are various council and commission and committee meetings held in the evenings just for regular meetings, and I think we all know, because we'll be here Thursday night, that there are often more than just regular meetings. But even with just regular meetings, we're looking at a minimum of 7 evenings a month that meetings could go well past, I don't know, last week, 11:30, or last council meeting, so it would kind of get into their safe parking time. One other thing that I forgot to include on concerns and limitations was how it would be impacted from the demolition of the old aquatic center. So that's another one that I just didn't include there. Possible proponents, though, is it's a natural area of oversight and security, just given the location to the police department. You know, it would be one of those things, I haven't talked it out with the chief, but, you know, if they're leaving to go on their patrol, you know, just driving right by, I don't know that it would be a huge burden to be able to have more police presence in that location. And what I just want to add, when I mention security and things of that nature, I'm not talking about the homeless families and individuals living in the units or the RVs or the cars. I'm also concerned about them being protected from being broken into or things of that nature. So it goes both ways. So here's the City Hall parking lot. One of my concerns with this parking lot, though, is as you can see, it really isn't designed for large vehicles. A lot of those turns to get in and out of the area, I agree that it might be a little challenging for somebody in a larger RV to get in there. So then it comes to the third one that we've looked at, and that is Ocean and I Street parking lot, which is at 121 South I Street. Concerns and limitations, while it's not a major limitation, but farmers market is held every Friday, 2 to 6 spring and fall, and then 2 to 5 during the winter. It is, though, located on one of the city's main thoroughfares. The bigger concern is, you know, we're really trying to promote that downtown. We have had applications come in or development reviews, development assistance with businesses that are looking to go in there and create more of a nightlife with walkability in the downtown. So some of those businesses, when they heard of this, they were concerned and they did reach out and say, hey, what's going on? And we let them know they have the ability to come in here and make comments regarding the concerns with using that site. Possible proponents, this is a huge lot, and it has sufficient area for maneuvering of large vehicles. I think it's about 80 sites if I count, or 80 parking spots when I counted them out. So it's got that going for it. So, I kind of felt like I was going to lay out, because as I was thinking through this, I got confused. So I said, let me just lay it out for you to help you decide what steps you may or may not want to take next. So if council likes one of those 3 sites, I wanted to give some background on how do we do this. So under the current zoning code, it would require a minor use permit at a cost of $1,360, and that takes approximately 10 business days to process. As you all know, Thursday night you will be here considering the code amendment. Under that amendment, this would require a conditional use permit, and that cost is $2,500. We said approximately 10 business days. I would say it may take a little longer. I believe conditional use permits have to go to the Planning Commission. Could be wrong, but just in the back of my brain, I'm thinking that. So designating a safe parking lot will allow the police department the ability to enforce illegal camping. That's an important one. I think it's important that we are prepared with on-site security if needed and portable restrooms if needed. So if this is what we wanted to do and this is where we wanted to start it, we would be asking or needing funding allocation of $55,000 for the remainder of this fiscal year to create a very bare bones safe parking lot. I would think it would be a stretch to call this a safe parking program. So then this comes to what I like to call the Cadillac. And I think this, from a human service standpoint, is going to make the biggest impact, and I think really should be where the city efforts should be going, because it is about the people. This is the human service component. So a comprehensive safe parking program is more than just picking a parking lot. It also supports services for transitional homeless people who are living in their vehicles. I think that we all recognize living in a vehicle is not humane. You should be in a home with heat and everything you need, running water. So what happens is advocates construct action plans with participants that place emphasis on permanent housing solutions. There's tons of money right now through the HEAP program through the county where we have service providers that are housing navigators that can come out and work with these program participants to help them with these action plans. They will help them to find employment or find assistance to get employment. Many of our vehicle homeless have jobs. They just can't afford rent around here. So they offer emergency support for those that maybe just need money for gas, need to get their tags, things like that. That's all money that's out there right now through the state and that the county got, and it can be used throughout the county. There's also asset stabilization and asset building. So, and these are all things that they work together to make sure they check all the boxes, they get everything they need, they partner with housing providers, they get them out of the car and into the home. So for this one, it was a little tougher to come up with a dollar amount because let's face it, we're the community development department, we oversee building, planning. We do not run a safe parking program. So the fiscal impact to provide a comprehensive safe parking program could be up to $360,000 a year. That's the top. I think I mentioned in the staff report it could be anywhere from $55,000 to $360,000. At $55,000, I always compare it to cars because my dad's a car guy, but at $55,000, you get that one that's going to need a little more tweaking, need a little more help, be a little more labor intensive, and at times, typically you're looking for a much larger volunteer base that is very experienced. If somehow our faith-based community could pull together and decide they want to do this, and they have a lead agency to do this, that would be amazing. We just haven't really had that happen yet. So an option here is for council, after considering all of these great ideas, is to direct staff to solicit proposals for a comprehensive safe parking program. And that could go one of two ways. Like we can say, let's solicit proposals for a comprehensive safe parking program that we will fund at X amount of dollars. You put the dollar mark on there. Or you say, you tell us how much it'll cost. These are the key things we want to see in it. Or you tell them, here's the site. We're going to give you the site. You tell us how you can make it happen. Again, the best interest of our community and really helping people. A comprehensive program, much to like if you're Googling stuff, New Beginnings out of Santa Barbara County, That's what they're doing, and they're having amazing successes in doing it, but they're a big ticket item. So, staff recommends City Council discuss implementation of a safe parking program as a pilot program, and or direct staff to prepare a request for proposals for a comprehensive safe parking program at the selected location, and or provide alternate direction. And then thank you.
Thank you. Given you tied, do I need to flip a coin on this? Councilmember Starbuck.
I knew you liked me better. City Attorney, a quick question. This is all based on the Ninth Circuit, the fact that people are allowed to sleep on the streets in vehicles because we, the cities, are not able to provide a place for them to go. Is that a general truth?
Yes, one of the reasons to have a safe parking program is that so you have a place where a person can sleep in their vehicle that's not on the street, and then that therefore allows you to cite someone for sleeping in their vehicle on the street.
So in order to get people out of a residential neighborhood or wherever they're sleeping on the street, now it's up to the rest of us to provide them somewhere to go. So is there any chance of this being overturned and it going back to the way it was before?
Yes. So like you said, that rule that I just explained is from a decision by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in a case called Martin versus the City of Boise, Idaho. And the City of Boise, Idaho is appealing that case to the U.S. Supreme Court. The council actually has joined a brief filed by a coalition of California cities in support of the Supreme Court taking up that appeal. The Supreme Court is going to decide whether to take that case in the next couple months. If they do not take the case, then the Ninth Circuit's decision will stand. But if they do take the case, then the Supreme Court could overturn it, and the things could go back to how they used to be as soon as, the Supreme Court would decide the case by June 2020.
Okay, so now we again are in that possible, we might not have to do this later, but okay, Ms. Alarcon, I guess the next question is, why do we as a city want to become so engaged in this when you yourself just said that there's a lot of money? The county has all kinds of money. We don't have any money. We don't have the $5,000 a month. We don't have the $50,000. We certainly don't have the $360,000 of taxpayer money to go ahead and put into a program like this. And if we're doing good at it, guess what? We're going to have caravans of these people showing up looking for the benefit that we can provide the few that are here. Why can't we just have the county, if we were to provide somewhere for our own, I'll just say the new transit center on D Street. We put them in there at night. How come the county can't come in and run this program with all their money they have? Why does it got to come back on us?
I couldn't really answer why the county didn't put City of Lompoc as an option for a safe parking program. They did fund New Beginnings with HEAP funding for a safe parking program, but the way it works, that county money, it's similar to us. I don't get the money for our CDBG grant and then go out and run all those programs. I give it to nonprofits and they do the programs. So I'm not in the business of doing that. So counties are not in the business of running safe parking programs. What they do is a request for proposals, and they list all of the things you can do with the money, and all of these nonprofits apply, and they compete. And unfortunate for us, there were no subrecipient agencies or nonprofits that submitted a proposal and said, I want to do a safe parking program in Lompoc. They said, I want to do emergency shelter, I want to do rapid rehousing, I want to do transitional housing, but there was nothing that said, I want to do a safe parking program in Lompoc.
Yeah, well, I guess in my mind, I am just so frustrated where we spend so much money as a city. We go into the riverbed, we clean it, we do it right, we'd never received anything from the county. Fish and Wildlife, they could care less unless it's a kid down there. Here again, we're going to try, possibly spend $360,000 again on a transient population. It's taxpayer versus homeless again right here, and it's not working for the city, especially the way we are now. So I'm very indecisive on this, and the locations, I can only think of nothing.
Councilmember Mosby.
Do we have a mechanism or a source for 50 grand?
General fund?
We don't have any money in the general fund.
Then no,
So we
do
definitely don't
not.
have the 360 grand. So I did, I understand, the whole program and the wish and the will to do this. Is this something that could be funded by CDBG money?
If you had a nonprofit that came in and, again, applied for the funding, as of right now, no. All of our CDBG funds have been allocated to needs of the city of Lompoc that typically general funds would pay for. So we are already stretching our grant funds to cover things that our general fund would typically cover.
Have you looked at any other grant opportunities or?
The only one that would have been there was HEAP, but again, HEAP was set up so we don't compete with those nonprofits. And again, we don't run these programs. So if I applied for that HEAP funding, I would have had to turn around and ask all those nonprofits, which one of you wants to run this program in Lompoc? And if they weren't even applying for it to begin with, what's the likelihood they would have even gone after
So we
that
haven't looked
money?
at private sector grant funding or anything like that?
We look at all grant funding.
So I'm just saying, we have nothing.
I have
We have no money.
I have 8 active grant applications right now.
Okay. But we don't have any, what I'm getting at is we don't have any near future funding opportunities for this.
No.
Okay. If I could ask the city attorney a little bit more what Councilmember Starbuck was bringing forward. Recently, we just got on board with appealing a decision. And a lot of people ask me the question, well, why can't we, and why can't the police write the tickets for the vehicles on the street? And maybe you could elaborate a little bit more why the police hands are kind of tied for the vehicles on the street with this case.
Yes, we do have an ordinance in Lompoc that says a vehicle cannot be used for residential purposes. That includes sleeping, if it's on public property. However, because of this decision by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, the decision says that it is illegal and it is a cruel and unusual punishment under the U.S. Constitution to give a citation to someone for sleeping on public property if there is not an available shelter bed or other place for them to sleep. So that means in order to cite someone for sleeping in their vehicle on the street, the city has to have an available shelter bed or an available place for them to park and sleep. And that's one of the purposes of a safe parking program.
And so as you were saying, is come this next June 2020, there completely could be a decision that overturns that and it would change the full dynamic of our ordinance that we may be going through or the recommendation we're going through today.
Yeah, if the Supreme Court takes up the case and they overturn that Ninth Circuit decision, we will be able to then again cite people for sleeping in their vehicles on the street, yes.
And so maybe in that 9-month period, maybe we should continue this item until we hear the ruling on this appeal that we signed up on as well. And in that interim, maybe, since we don't have any money to do this, maybe we could try to find some other partners to do this program. But other than that, I think, great presentation. I understand the compassion component. We talked about this before. I mean, we're 9.8% of the population, and we have what percentage of the Section 8 originating from Lompoc? I think it's close to 30%.
I tried to delete that. I'm trying to learn building code.
Yeah,
But we are very compassionate already.
It's above 30.
Yeah, above 30% originating. So we have a lot of the program already, trying to help the people get out of the units. I think we're doing more than a lot of other communities in this aspect, especially since we don't have funding to. My recommendation, again, would be to continue this item until after, well, we would hear, well, something else would change. Definitely in June, bring it back after June of 2020.
We could do June, or we could say, bring it back after the Supreme Court has made a decision. Because if the Supreme Court decides not to take the case.
We'd have to have a date certain, though.
No, we wouldn't.
No? Okay.
Because this is not a public hearing.
Okay, good. So I would make that motion that we continue this item until after we hear something with the,
We need to finish discussion and open for public comment, so your motion will need to be...
actually, I could make the continuation thing prior to that. Just need a second on that one.
Councilmember Vega.
I have a different take on this program. I think that the benefit to the public safety issue, we need to look at that. The funding issue and the mechanism is not there, of course. And I think we spoke with Mr. Troop one time. We said something about implementing a safe parking program, but not actually pulling the trigger on it. Are there any, or pulling funds? So basically, on paper, you have a program in place, but the funding mechanism has not been triggered. Is there any benefit to doing this? And I didn't mean to look both ways here, but what are the benefits there, or are there any benefits? Right now, currently, those are a couple of sites. We didn't include the city parking lot. Maybe there's a reason. Okay, on Cypress and I, and between J Street where the swap meet used to be. That was a city parking lot that's not used at night. There may be some restrictions there. Again, just a question, why is Ryan Park not one of the possibilities? Has a huge parking lot. There are lights there. It is a facility no one uses at night. The in and the out of the trailers or the RVs is an issue here at City Hall. So if we look at a couple of other options there, again, I would say city parking lots instead of having it on the main thoroughfare. I agree. It's not an economic booster for anybody here even visiting or coming to stay at the hotels here or going through their little wine events or whatever they're here for, whether it's Flower Festival or some sort of event. I don't think economically it's good to have that on the main streets. But for the people that are involved, I do feel for them. And, you know, I'd like to at least have us look at something that's going to accommodate, because what we have is we have Aviation Drive out there, which is out there by the casino. We have lack of our staffing level is to a point where, hey, no one's bothering them out there. Is it possible on a public city street that's out of the way, can you pick a portion of that and turn that into a safe parking program, even if it's not next to the police station? If the funding mechanism does come up in the future, or we can talk about it later on and discuss this, is there a way of putting private security? There's already security from the casino, but that's for them. But I mean, at the same token, it's already happening out there. You need restrooms. You need someone to say it's okay, it's out of the way. Yes, we'd like to have it right next to the police station to cut down on whatever we're looking at as far as the public safety mechanism, but the police have their job to do too, and they're patrolling the city. And I think with the security guard aspect of it, I think that's going to be a necessary thing for something like this. And then we have to have the services included. We can't just say, as a city, we're going to implement this safe parking program, and then we're going to have people there that are going to be having drug abuse, they're going to have domestic violence. Whatever a normal person might have, we need to have facilities so mental health is involved. You can't just have the police and tell them to deal with all the peaks and valleys of whoever knows that the people that have gone through and been stressed out through life stresses. I don't think it's fair that we tell them, hey, treat them like anybody else. If they break the law, you know, kick them out. Now what? Okay? We have something here that we haven't implemented. We haven't fully vetted it out, that if someone's breaking laws, you tell them to leave, but where they're going to go? Where are they going to go? You know what I mean? So I think we're kind of, we have our feet in mud right here. We're kind of stuck. But I think on the human side of it, I think it's imperative for the nonprofits, and as you mentioned, one of those other entities, 501c3s, to be involved with this without us taking this on by ourselves. I think we need to do some sort of an RFP if we're going to move forward with this. But I think in the meantime, I'm not sure that just having a safe parking program on the books without the funding mechanism, is there any benefit to that? Does anyone know?
So I talked about it in the staff report. And I did say there's just no way you can get around it with zero money. I mean, you want to put a sign up that says safe parking and all vehicles must leave by this time. That costs money. You're going to need to get whether it is a CUP or an MUP, that's either $2,500 or $1,360. So that's money. If you're going to put porta potties, I learned with the triage center, those are expensive. So even at a minimal, like bare bones, putting the city at risk, no security, no lighting, a location that's far out of the way, Ryan Park or whatever, I think the risk would outweigh the benefit. So I would hate for, this is just me speaking just from my experience at the triage center. Of course, from what I understand, the vehicle homeless are a very different population than the riverbed homeless. But I would want to know that you have at least $50,000 or $55,000 earmarked for this. And if the city does not have that in general fund to allocate this project, you do not have the money to do it. So that is, as I wrote this staff report and went through it, believe me, I tried to figure out a bare bones, cheap way to do this. The cheaper you get, the more risk you put yourself at.
Gotcha. So the city really is not in a position to take on this by themselves. Without any funding, the best thing we can do is to table it until we do have a discussion later on, as Councilman Mosby said. And I just wanted to clarify, and I wanted to give you a couple of other options, because I think it's going to be a necessary thing that we do in the future. Once we find funding, we just have to do it, okay? We shouldn't be over here victimizing people that are on their last leg. Or, again, we don't want to be the welcome wagon for all the RVs and everything in the county. We want to do this as a program which is being vetted with a direction.
I want to add that the way this program is structured, if done properly, you are not the welcome wagon, because they have to be registered vehicles. They have to be functional RVs, not RVs with leaking sewage, doing whatever they want. They have to be enrolled in the program. If they are not, you're kicking them out. And because of that, your police officers now have your political support to go out there and cite them. And now they're not telling everybody online, best place to go be homeless is Lompoc, because they don't cite you, they don't make you move your RV, you could park there forever and do whatever you want. So Google Lompoc and most friendly communities in California, we're up there. I don't know if it's a ranking we want, but it's there. And that's part of the reason. If we do nothing, then more come.
No, I got you. I know, Mayor, that we were saying we had to go to public comment. I know that he had a motion on the table, and I'll let you clarify whether it requires a second or we can do that or not. Otherwise, I'll let you do what you do.
So you can choose, based on our city attorney's clarification, because it's an ask for continuation, you may provide a second. I personally would like to hear from the community. There may be somebody present who would like to offer up that they're interested in filing a request for proposal with us. I think this is something that we put on the books, and we have made the excuse that we might not have to do this in the future. We don't have the money. What I'd like to do is find a way to make this happen, because we are causing pain of our residents, causing pain on our public safety by not being able to put this into play. And back in the fall, when we put this on the books, there was an organization that was willing to put the application in with the county to acquire the HEAP funding. But because we could not decide on a location and move forward on a potential RFP, that organization filed for HEP money, HEAP money, with the county, and is spending it in town, but spending money on something that only solves a problem for a very small group of people instead of potentially a very large group of people. So again, I get that there are those of us on this council that would rather not have to make the hard decision and find a way to fund this. I'm personally tired of not focusing on this and finding a way to fund it. And one of those is to have this discussion, move it forward as an RFP, identify a potential partner who can apply for HEAP funding. There's a second round of HEAP funding coming forward. And if we are not in line with a partner who's qualified to apply for that, we will miss out on that funding once again and potentially never address this issue. So that's where I stand. So you are welcome to give Councilmember Mosby his continuation, or we can wait and take public comment.
If I could just clarify one thing. One of my decisions, which was on the minority the last time this came up, was based on economics here, selling Lompoc. I think we all need a class in how to sell Lompoc, and I think that because it's a safe parking program, and because we're looking at zoning amendments and a zoning update, and we're looking at overlays, and we're trying to create traffic and foot traffic here in this town, I think doing it on the main streets of Lompoc is not going to be taken well as far as selling Lompoc economically. We have Explore Lompoc trying to sell Lompoc. We have Chamber of Commerce trying to sell Lompoc, and we're trying to do that. So I think it wouldn't be fair to make them the poster children of H and Ocean Street, and that's the reason I voted against it the last time. And I'm just going to table what I had to say right now. I think public comment will be all right. We're going to come back anyway. So I think I'm going to go along with that right now.
Thank you. Councilmember Mosby.
You went along with, what was that? What was your final?
No, I'm okay with giving you a second, but I think I'm going to just hold off and let public comment go ahead and carry its way.
And the reason, there's two reasons why that I made the motion I made, and if I can continue on with that. One was because there's a court case coming up that's significant and to change what we're mandated to do in order to force an ordinance, number one. And number two is we don't have any money to do anything we're dreaming about here. So until we come up with something that changes, and I'd say the first time to come back, because there might be some other things that come about down the road, but why put something on the books you have no money for? And until you see what money you have, then you can worry about spending it. But we're a long ways away. What's our reserve fund down to? 1.1 million?
The estimate for the end of the year is 1.7, 1.8 million.
Okay, we're looking at, I mean, a tight. What's our policy? We're supposed to be sitting with
25%, about $8 million.
So we're supposed to be sitting with $8 million in the piggy bank. And we can't afford this, let alone if the rules change with the Supreme Court, things that we're doing here via resolution and ordinance will significantly change. So that's why my thing is to recommend is to continue this until we hear a court ruling, which would again change everything. So that's, you know, I wasn't looking to roll into public comment because we're going to talk about something that we can't do.
Councilmember Cordova.
I personally would like to hear public comment. I do think that, and I agree with Councilmember Mosby's statements about us not having the funding. I fully understand that. However, I think that when we don't tackle the issues and we don't talk about a possible resolution, and we keep kicking the can down the road, I've heard that statement up on this dais before since being up here, then I feel like we continue to deteriorate the city and not really targeting the issues that we need to talk about and we need to figure out a way to fund. I fully understand that we don't have the funding, but I think that we need to still have the discussion. We've heard the outcry, I will say, from some of our business community members that have been up here and have said, it affects my business. It creates a safety issue for our employees. And so I personally would like to hear public comment, and I think I would like to be able to have the conversation.
Hold on just a second. So I just want to clarify that Council Mosby currently doesn't have a second on the floor and that we are opening the floor for public comment. He said he would give you a second after public comment. Clarification from City Attorney.
Yeah, I think Councilmember Vega said he's okay with giving you a second. but he wants to hear public
I'll
comment.
modify this, and we'll wait until after public comments, since you want to hear it.
Thank you. Now public comment is open. Please come forward. Thank you.
My name's William Pollan. I have a business here in Lompoc. Honorable Mayor, Council. I have a couple things that I want to comment on. One, the places that you've picked for this type of a operation, right downtown. Everybody sees it. Do you want that downtown? We struggle enough now to try to make things go in Lompoc. And then you want to bring in these RVs that are homeless people downtown, right in the middle of town? What are you thinking? You can't put it there. What's wrong with the RV park out there at River Park? Take them out there, or put them at the farmhouse. What was that built for originally? I think you need to think about it a little bit more than to try to put it downtown. That is a big mistake. And you know what Los Angeles looks like? You know what San Francisco looks like? It's a mess, and you're trying to bring it in. I think you better think about it a little bit harder before you destroy Lompoc, like they have LA, San Francisco, Oregon. People think.
Thank you.
Carl Jones, how you doing? My question is, if you put these people on any of these city parking lots without a program in place and funding, okay? So you tell the guy, you can go over to this park, it's a safe place. He gets robbed, stabbed, falls down. It's not a safe place. Do you open the city up for liability in that case? You better have the funding. You better have the security. Because if you say this is a safe place, in this sue-happy state, we'll be owing a lot more money. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pastor Brian Halterman of my commission and also manager of the Bridge House and work with Good Samaritan. I do want to share just a little bit with the council and everything to remind of some conversations that happened, because there's been talk that there weren't partners lined up, and that's not accurate. There were partners lined up. Good Samaritan had applied for HEAP funding to help pay for a case manager, had worked with the city on all of that. That is still out there and still willing, but we also don't have money to pay for it all. Also, when it comes to the faith-based organizations, they are ready to step up to the plate, but they also need to see a city council and a city that's willing to step up to the plate at the same time and put some skin in the game. The statement that I hear over and over again is a statement that says, if we build it, they will come. Do we realize that they're here? And do we realize that they is a person, not a motorhome and not a car? The other thing that comes about this, and I've thought about this since way back in the meeting, whenever it was, December last year, you guys are also looking at the safe parking program to solve a parking situation that you can solve by making laws. But no one wants to tell RVs they can't be parked on the street. Okay? We want to instead say you can't sleep in your RV or you can't sleep in your car. And the thought that we're going to delay this until July of 2020, it's just going to get a whole lot worse. But I can tell you right now, with the HEAP funding that's coming down and sitting in all the meetings that I sit in that deal with homelessness, housing first is the new terminology, and it is the new way. The Supreme Court will unlikely overturn something, and even with the government we have in California right now, housing first is the call. So at that point, it's all about housing people first. I hear the business side, and I hear people who say, we don't want to put them in the middle of town. I say that, you know what, we as Lompoc love people, and we've loved people forever. And when we sit there and say we need to shun these guys and put them out wherever, it just breaks my heart, because that's not who we are as Lompoc. That's not who we've ever been as Lompoc. And that's what we want to do. This is a set program, and I don't know that we have a full understanding of what this program looks like. And it's a program. And I think that's what some of the challenge is I think you guys may be trying to fit a square peg in a round hole because we don't really understand what this program is, but no one wants to sit and talk about it. Are there organizations willing to step up to the plate? There are. But we also got to know that the city's involved in it. The last part of it is I don't mean to go against the estimates of the cost, but I also run a bridge house shelter that houses 80 to 100 people a night, and I know our budget is not much more than what was proposed for this, so I know it can be done for a whole lot less. And the security component, I also have a lot of feelings about that after being at the triage center and everywhere else. But thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Nicholas Gonzalez, resident of Lompoc. You can't be all things to all people. And I think that we need, in the interim, to really focus on what has been the most important thing to most of the community residents, which is public safety, our police and our fire. We have not been able to find money to staff in a manner which they have requested. I don't know where you're going to find an additional $360,000 without further depleting your reserves. And I read quite a bit, and it's the same story throughout California. They keep talking that soon cities will only be able to meet the obligation of police and fire. We're already at that point with our general fund. So you have to really start weighing out what services you're going to provide. The county has an obligation to manage a lot of these social services. That's how government was set up. In the past, the county funded items, and then when the funding runs out, the city's left holding the bag. We've seen that with CDBG and different programs we've had. We've seen that with other programs. We saw that with what happened to the riverbed cleanup. I just certainly hate to see us going further and further in the hole and pushing us further and further to a financial crisis. We can't do it all. So be selective in what we can do. We have a system to house homeless people. We don't have to make a system each and every step of the way. If the people are without a home, we have Section 8 here. We have agencies that are putting people in. We, at a meeting the other day, I heard that there was one of the local providers has a rapid rehousing system. That's where we should be focusing on. If the focus is putting people in housing, let's focus putting people in housing, not putting them in parking lots. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Martha Pollen, and my husband was up here earlier, and he and I have the same feelings, so obviously I support him. But one thing I would like and request of the council is that before a decision is made on this, that you open it back up to the public again, because I do think before that the decision this big should not be made by a very few. And I think the public, the taxpayers, need to be a part of the decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. John Lynn, Lompoc resident. Congratulations, the county has dumped it on you again. And unfortunately, I don't see a solution for that. I think they're going to keep doing it and making us financially responsible for what they're required to take care of under the law. So maybe it's time to tell them they have to pay. Maybe it's time to get together with other cities in the county who are facing the same thing we are and have our city attorneys chat and find a way to force them to take care of their responsibility. Now, having said that, I think you all recall that I was a pretty strong advocate for JM Park in the past, and I continue to be, because it is a well-lit facility. It is open. It's easily accessible. I hadn't noticed that the parking spaces weren't striped, but I hereby volunteer to take my striping machine out there and stripe them if that's the thing that gets in the way of putting this facility in there. I think a good solution would be for two of you to volunteer, to form an ad hoc committee, to speak to providers in the community who might be able to pull something together. I think there's a willingness out here, but somebody has to organize it. And two of you could be those organizers. I'd also like you to think about the area along the wastewater plant, which used to be the drought-tolerant garden. That is also a well-lit area. It is not adjacent to a residential neighborhood. It is easy parking. Certainly providing porta potties there or at JM Park could be easily done by fencing in an area. I actually have fencing, and I would put it up for you at no charge. Perhaps, as Brian said, we as a community can pull together and cause these things to happen with minimal funding. Because if all of us came to you, City Council, and said, you know, for $20,000, we could fix this, I suspect it'd be the fastest 5-0 vote we'd ever seen. But if we came to you and said it's $200,000, you have a lot of other priorities. So put two of you together, volunteer to have an ad hoc committee, get Mr. Bryan and the other folks that want to get involved, and if you need something physically done, I'm here to help you. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no one rise, we will close public comment and bring it back to council. Councilmember Mosby.
The city attorney, there was a comment made about if we just make a rule about no parking RVs on the street. Isn't Santa Barbara do something similar to that, and something's happening to them?
Yes, Santa Barbara has recently adopted an ordinance prohibiting RVs from parking on city streets at all times entirely, and they were immediately sued for adopting that ordinance. I would, however, note that the council has considered this in the past and I don't think has decided to take action, but it is possible to prohibit cars from parking on certain streets, not all streets.
We have some of that already, I believe, in place with some timing and such in a couple areas. But again, until something comes forward, and maybe I can change my motion that we take this until we have a court ruling. Could it qualify it as well, or until, I hate to say that, money appears, but until you find a funding mechanism. Otherwise, we're just chasing our tail here. With doing some, you're going to put something together you don't have funding for. It just doesn't make sense. So that would be my motion, that we just continue this until one of those two things happens.
Councilmember Vega.
I'll give you a second if you're making a motion to table this until the future changes happen, or we find out there's a law change and somebody else can bring it back. That would be my second, if you'll amend that to that.
That's what it is.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussions or questions? Seeing none, let's vote. And that passes 3-2. Any written communications?
Nothing.
Thank you. Oral communications for 2 minutes on any city matter. Please come forward if there is any additional city matter you would like to speak to for 2 minutes.
Mayor, Council, Matthew Barron again. I'm sorry, I should have come forward to the previous comment section, but my question is, in the past, I'm sure this gentleman back here may have the answer, but in the past, when I've inquired about the property around the Bridge House being used for homeless services, I've been told that it can't be because of zoning. So I'm wondering if we only have one shelter, but we have land around that shelter that right now is prevented from being used to expand in any way. I mean, the property there, could it be rezoned and then used for a safe parking space out there by the bridge house? I don't know. But I'm just saying, perhaps there are some zoning issues that could be addressed and changed to find a place that's somewhere better suited for such a program. That's the only thing I have to say.
Thank you for that. Seeing no one else for oral communications, we'll close that. And normally we don't respond to that, those kinds of comments we leave or recommend to staff, but that is county property that current building is on, so take it up with Board of Supervisors regarding that matter. All right, we will bring it back to council comments and meeting reports, and we'll start with Councilmember Mosby.
I represent the city of Lompoc at the past SB-CAG meeting. I did attend the Guardian Angels meeting and learned a bunch about that. Also, as the county park commissioner, had our meeting this last Thursday, and we're talking, and with the assistant city manager, poking at him and prodding at him. A lot of good things came about that meeting. It was kind of more about how we could get it done. And they've dug deep on this, out opening the estuary at Ocean Park, and they couldn't even find why the signs were up there that said you couldn't enter the water. So they were perplexed in a lot, and it could be maybe a matter of months that we could get some recreational opportunities opened up for the estuary component, which is good news. So everybody pushing together, we're getting closer and closer to that one. Non-motorized, of course, this would be more of a passive canoeing, kayaking, windsurfing potentially, and waterboarding components. I did find out recently they used to have the dog, what do they call it, the bird dog challenges out there, where they launch out there and the dogs would jump off and stuff. So they're back in the 70s. So there's been a lot of things used to happen out there that potentially could be restarted. And that's it. Thank you.
Councilmember Starbuck.
No reports.
Thank you. Councilmember Vega.
I'd like to give an applause to the Guardian Angel program out there. I was listening to Mr. Barron out there, and sounds like you have a chapter here in Lompoc. From what I understand, it's an entity that it's an offspring of the original Boy Scout mission, which is kind of odd. You know, you learn something there, that originally it was a Boy Scout, and it was put together as for community to get together within their neighborhood, similar to a neighborhood watch. And I'm hoping that your chapter is successful here, and I'm hoping that you'll take steps to introduce yourself to the police chief and the police for awareness. I think that it's important for them to understand, and maybe you get some guidance from them, how you guys can at least get their blessing so they know that you're on the map and you're all on the same page, okay, to help communities and gather volunteers to help your effort. So thank you.
Councilmember Cordova.
I did attend on September 20th the Prisoner of War MIA ceremony held at Vandenberg Air Force Base, and later on that evening the peace walk that took place here at City Hall, as well as today the ceremony to recognize the establishment of Combined Force Space Component Command at Vandenberg Air Force Base.
First, thank you to the community for the wonderful support and turnout at the Memorial Walk on September 20th. I think not only the family of Marlon, but all the families who've lost to violence this year really appreciated that support. All of those other family members were there, and they were very grateful for the community showing that support. I also attended the Vandenberg Air Force Base POW MIA ceremony and today's recognition ceremony for Combined Space Force Component Command. That's a mouthful. I also, at the city's expense, attended Santa Monica's Housing First tour that was organized by Home for Good, and I also attended the League of California Cities Channel County's fall dinner. There's a few things I want to remind the community is going on this week. We have the Chalk Festival, the second annual Chalk Festival happening downtown this weekend, so be sure and go out to that. There is also the City Photo Contest, and even though it's not till the end of the month, the deadline for submitting photos is October 18th, and there is information on the city website. The Chamber's Military Committee is also having its Airmen's Appreciation Barbecue on October 10th, and they're looking for volunteers to help serve and need to know that as soon as possible to make sure you have the ability to be on base and contact the Chamber to volunteer there. And then last but not least, the mural that is the butterfly mural is needing to be removed due to property owner wanting it being removed. And even though it's city property that the Mural Society maintains for us, because it extends into the right-of-way of that property, we have to honor that. So they're looking for assistance this Saturday morning from 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. to help dismantle all the panels, drive them over to storage in trucks, and store them properly. So if you're available, contact the Mural Society. And before we close, maybe just have the city attorney clarify I know the public's upset, but this is what happens. The murals get moved around, buildings get torn down, new paint, new construction, new murals, and so even though they're city property maintained by the Mural Society, legally we're required to honor the request.
Sure, Mayor, thank you. We are talking about the mural at 118 South 8th Street on the side of that building. It's adjacent to a vacant lot. The owner of that vacant lot notified the city and the Mural Society that he would like to have the mural taken down. He said that he's interested in putting up a fence that would block the mural. The fence would also prevent the city and the Mural Society from accessing that mural to maintain it or remove it. It would essentially be blocked. There's no agreement in place or any rule or regulation that prevents the owner of that vacant lot from putting up the fence or potentially even from removing the mural, because based on our GIS at the city, that mural may actually be on that vacant lot owner's property. But there's nothing preventing that owner from putting up a fence. So therefore, in order to preserve the mural with certainty, the Mural Society has decided to remove it, as you stated.
Thank you.
And potentially relocate it to a different location.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. And then finally, Tony and Mona Miranda sent a letter to the fire department and sent it via me and wanted to thank Team 1A for their response on September 13th. They were very appreciative at the quick response for identifying what was causing the fire and smoke and helped them in a very prompt, polite, and professional manner solve the solution. And I just wanted the community to know that our senior citizens are very grateful and just wanted that out there in the public. The letter's already been sent over, but I think, reading it out loud is important for our staff to hear that. So Thursday's the zoning ordinance update at 6:30 p.m. here in this building, but we will adjourn this regular meeting till 6:30 p.m. on Tuesday, October 15th, 2019. Thank you.